terrible that people were complaining in the old newspapers. Digitization is our friend today, so we see a lot of the articles that were written in that early period and real complaints about Barbados tobacco. So those guys who came here are going to be looking for something constantly on you look for something that really makes them rich because that's why they invested and came out here to get rich. And some of those who had money, got richer because as rich as you are, you seem never to be satisfied. People always want more. So that's an old state of mind. Yeah, human state of mind. And so they came up, they were sent out here. And like I said, some of them were stolen away and they were the first laborers here. Then underneath that, you're going to have another group called the colors. And all of these are derogatory names, and we do not use anymore, of course. So these colored people would be the product of a white plantation owner who rapes his black slave woman, and they have children. And we use the word rape because she doesn't have the agency to say no, she can't say no. Right? So it's not a consensual thing. So that's when you use the word rape. And then, although I like to say here at this point, don't blanket slavery. Coming out of high school, there will be things that you were being taught about history. But as you go to the university level, so you can see old documents for yourself and come to your own consensus, right? So looking at some of these documents, I realized, yes, that was the case initially, of course. But then there were some people who were different. Because everybody is not the same. You know that there are good people and bad people in every group of people across the world. None all good, none all bad. Yeah, although some people like to paint it differently, they look at you and they decide who you are based on how you look. Madness, right? And so, with that said, there were some men in that white plantation owner group, those white men, who did things a little bit differently. And I always like to highlight and put a caveat here to show that you can't blanket it. There's some of these men in the early period because the other thing I should have said before is that I tried to pull a thread of change through the tour across the century so that we see how far Barbados has come and who we are as a people from settlement through colonization and slavery to this day. Right? We've come a long way. So with that, these guys, 16 and 1700, very brutal, inhumane times, extremely so, right? And so some of these guys, they don't want to have children, whoever they can have them with, and sell them too. Because if they want to make money, they don't care about none of that. They're selling the woman and the children, right? Just like today, people will have children and the men never look back, right? Same kind of thing. But there were some of them who can't tell you if they were in love or not over time, but I can tell you that they were governors of Carolina, one was the Barbadians, 1650s. Right? So then when Carolina split, those settlers fell on the South Carolina side. So Barbadians settled South Carolina. We have a connection with Liberia as well as Barbadians went from here in 1865. So now we continue to do research. We find you know what happened? We found two brothers. These were they called Dutchmen. And they had two plantations here on this island. And then they went up to New York. And they bought Shelter Island off Long Island, in Long Island, in Long Island Sound. Shelter Island is over there. And they bought that. And that became the provisioning plantation for Barbados. So what they needed to grow, all the wood, the meats, whatever, and sell here to support the two plantations that they had here. So there's a long established relationship between Barbados and a lot of other places and people because who was it? You guys were over there in the other square, Freedom Square, and there's a big wall there called the Builders Wall. And that Builders Wall has the last names of all kind of people who were here from the 1600s until today. And so some of them are lost to us. We don't have those names anymore because people came in here as the principal colony because Barbados was a land of opportunity. Can you believe that? We were wowed when we started to read some of this old information, letters and documents and stuff. We were the land of opportunity, like USA became the land of opportunity. This is what it was in the 1600s. People came here to find wealth, to change their lives and that kind of thing. And then when sugarcane would happen in the 1640s is when everything started to change and brought slavery. But colonization initially was those rich men out of England, and they were running small holdings, and then 1640s, sugarcane would change everything, and we're going to talk about that, right? So that is the setup of how we started. The other thing is, if we look at what I've coined the societal pyramid, and I like the pyramid to show you what the society looked like in the beginning, because Barbados started also as a very divided society. And the idea was, it was strategically that, because those who were ruling, they wanted to control, total and absolute control, right? So they are going to divide and conquer. And to this day, I don't think that we have across the world, because it was a systematic thing, and across the world, I don't think that as Black people we have recovered from what was done all back then. Systematic putting place, right? So this pyramid would look, I like the pyramid because it shows you all the people on the pyramid in the society, but it also shows how big the groups were and where they lay on the pyramid, right? So you had at the we had the first pattern. So you know what? Listen, buddy, just get on over town. We don't want to be bothered with all this mess. Well, they see Captain Wolverstone, who is representing the one who established the credit line and all that. Wolverstone is the pissy captain. Like, Wolverstone is like, no, trying to convince the Power Brothers that he has a right to settle. Power Brothers haven't had enough. I will tell you that there was a skirmish between British brothers. Cannon fire is what I'm talking about. Will erupt, and Wolverstone's boat will get damaged. And the literature puts it beautifully, as it says, Wolverstone's boat is damaged, and he is forced to limp away from Old Town. And he limps away that damaged vessel 7 miles in the southerly direction, will bring him into this bay back here. And from that day, the 5th of July, yesterday was the anniversary, 5th of July 1628 to this day, this bay is known as Carlisle Bay, because that was the steamer, right? That grifter. His title, although he had empty pockets, his title, he was the Earl of Carlisle, if you please. So he had no money, but he had a title, right? And so we're saddled with his name applied to that day to this day, right? Over 300 years, yeah? And that is how Barbados started. Is that a good start? A lot of shady stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on here, right? And with that, which we won't get into, there was some civil war that would happen around here between the faction that will be at Old Town, the first group of people, and this second group of schemers that come in here. And these ones there will be a ruthless guy called Henry Hawley, and he is the one who would, I like to say, strongly encourage the ones at Old Town to come into the fold. Don't let it be a problem, right? And so under Henry Hawley, structured government started from 1639, so early days, 1628, 1630, 11 years, structured government starts to happen, right? And so with all that, Hawley will shortly be dragged back to England in chains. He will have the governor in Old Town killed. Hawley will do all that, though he was ruthless. So lots of things. We have an intriguing long history, because Barbados would be the first British colony to be established in this region, right? They would come up and sit in 1624. But then the following year, of course, they blew them, of course, here, and the English, of course, and they would come to Barbados. Because of geographical positioning, you see how we are out of the chain, right? Yeah. So out of the chain, and it's panoramic view. So for security and all that, so we became the chosen colony. And although we are little, it is that Barbados became England's principal colony, shown in how they look after their family. Can't marry her, huh? Can't marry her in the 16 and 1700s, but I'm going to make provisions for her and these children. Although I know the society in which I live and what it accepts and does not accept, right? Still, I'm gonna make a statement from the brain. So when they die and their wills are read, you're gonna see that they have left their property for that woman and their children. He's trying a thing, right? Mm-hmm. He knows that the courts are, but I'm still gonna put it down, and he puts it down. Well, you know the courts don't say anything about that. The establishment is going to be like, this man has got to be out of his mind. He is leaving property for a slave woman and her children. Nah, that can't run around here, fam. No, that's not going to work, right? So with that, they're going to overturn that will, and don't they will say, Don't tell me anything about being of a song mind, because you know that's how girls are framed. Person of a song mind and all that. No, don't come here with no song mind thing. Because the mere fact that he wrote a document like that shows you that he could not have been of a song mind. Well, man out of his mind. So you know what? The ill that he has perpetrated here, we have to resolve that. So they get into it, and they overturn his will. And guess what happens? That woman and those children go back to child slavery, and they are separated. Little kids are separated from their parents. So you see the inhumanity of what people have to deal with in those years, right? And we were, like I said, the principal colony, so they were honing all their colonization skills right here on this beautiful, and always a beautiful island, you know, hasn't changed. But the crap that was happening here, unbelievable, yeah? And so that is what those guys would do, 16 to 1700s, making their statement from the grave. And then as we travel across the centuries, late 1700s, it's going to be a little bit of a shift. And in that shift, we see enslaved woman Amaryllis, who has 5 children with white plantation owner Robert Cullimore. And Robert finds a roundabout way to get Amaryllis out of slavery. Remember I said I can't tell you if they were in love, but that sure to me looks like love. Right, by the late 1700s. He finds a roundabout way, involves one of his friends or whatever to try to get her, fight her out of slavery. And it worked. So Amaryllis and the children now become free colored people. After that, they have 6 more children together, and those 6 children would be said to be. I'm not really. Okay, all right. So let's see, looking at it. So then they become those 6 children born out of into freedom. They would be called born free, right? And Amaryllis and those 11 children had access to that plantation after Robert dies.
You said who's who?
Not seeing them, we're gonna make it wrong again. All right.
You see all of these? All of these. With the snow cones.
So sweet.
I know.
Oh man, those flies are like
Bees, people, bees.
Those are bees, girl.
do not
All right, guys, come on. All right, guys. So
it tastes very mango.
there used to be the Parliament building. That's sessions of Parliament were held there before we had the big building in the front street. And the thing about it is that when the first Englishman government started about 1639, structured government, and they would meet across the town in taverns and in bars, and they would drink and they would get drunk, right? And they're making laws and they're losing records and all that good stuff, right? So then it became very apparent that the government needed a home. So they would start to rent different spaces across the town for the sessions of Parliament. And so it was held here, like I said, it was on the top floor. And then here where the gazebo is, there used to be another house here that sessions of Parliament were also held here. And that house was extremely historic. It had great historic value because I don't know if on this pier you met Samuel Jackman Prescott, who was a colored man. Samuel Jackman Prescott would become the first non-white Barbadian to sit as a representative in the House of Parliament. In 1843, he sat at his first session in the House of Parliament right here.
I didn't know it was like a continuation.
Yeah, I know. They had like a whole somewhere over here.